welcome to Lunchtime Politics, reaching you live from our global headquarters here in the nation's commercial nerve center, Lagos. I'm Jeffrey Uzoma. Let's bring you our top stories. President Bola Tinubu arrives South Africa for this year's session of the Nigeria-South Africa Binational Commission in Cape Town. In preparation for the public hearing on the tax reforms bills, promoters of the bills make strong argument why the legislation should fly during Channels Television's town hall meeting following a push by some northern interests that it's skewed against them. Thanks again for joining us on the program. There's a lot to piggyback on what happened last night on Channels Television, given that town hall meeting. But before we get to all of that, we'll begin our tracking of the polity from outside our shores as President Bola Tinubu arrives in Cape Town, South Africa, for the 11th session of the Nigeria-South Africa Binational Commission, known as the BNC. It was received by South Africa's Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Roland Lamola, alongside Nigeria's Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Bianca Odumegu Ojukwu. The Nigeria-South Africa Binational Commission BNC deliberations with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa will cover issues bordering on political consultations, council and migration, banking and finance, defense and security, manufacturing, social sector, mines and energy, and others. The Nigerian-South Africa Binational Commission was established in 1999 to strengthen ties of friendship and cooperation between the two nations. And back home, despite the passing the second reading second reading at the Senate, President Tinubu's tax reform bills have continued to generate controversies across the country. The most vocal opposition have been northern governors who claim the bills are against the North. At the town hall meeting organized by Channels Television, some of the concerns came to the fore as participants discussed the implication of the tax bills on the country's tax system and economy in general.
The special town hall on tax reform bills.
It's a gathering of experts, including tax practitioners, politicians, journalists, economists, and their mission is to discuss and address some of the controversies that have greeted the 4 tax reform bills that have now scaled second reading at the Senate. Opening the floor is the man whose team produced the controversial tax bills, the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. And for the obtained time, he explains the objective of the bills.
There'll be exemption from withholding tax. Also for small businesses, they don't have to charge withholding tax, neither do they have to deduct it on their vendors. There'll be exemption for them in terms of deducting withholding tax from their vendors. They will not have to account for VAT when they invoice their customers. They will have the opportunity of simplified accounts that does not have to be audited to reduce the cost of doing business for them should they have to file returns.
According to him, rather than the opposition against the bills in some quarters, especially state governments, the states should actually embrace the bills because of what they stand to gain.
These bills will also allow states to enjoy tax exemption should they issue bonds. Today, federal government bond is tax exempt. State government bond is not tax exempt. These bills are trying to correct that inequity. We must recognize that this is a federation and we must empower this.
After that, there were interceptions from the panelists who all claimed to have gone through the entire bills before arriving at the decisions.
The issue of VAT, I think we might need to think about VAT going to 15% in medium term. To my mind, 7.5% VAT, I agree, is among the lowest. But when you look at our income capacity now, as a country, our GDP just lost 250% of its shares from 400 billion to about 200 billion. No text to exchange rate. There is nothing the committee can do about that.
In my own just simple arithmetic, the people of Sokoto should be clapping and singing to the high heavens that now they have an opportunity for them to add value. The same thing with my state, Kano.
It was not all a pat on the back for Mr. Oyedele and his team, as some concerns were raised on the process of leading to the drafting of the bills.
Free zone community has a concern about that bill. And many people have not addressed this. Even you have not addressed it while explaining the work of the committee to the National Assembly. I want to state that while the intention of government and your committee to modernize the tax framework in Nigeria is salutary, I want to say to you that some sections of that bill, that is the Nigerian Tax Bill 2024, some sections that are in that bill are inimical to the survival of the Nigerian free zone scheme.
With more engagements expected to follow before the bills eventually become law, it is expected that the reservations about the bills will be laid to rest to pave the way for its implementation.
To chip in a few things, right? But allow.
Well, I did talk about the fact that we're going to piggyback on what happened yesterday at the town hall where my colleague Shane Okimbale hosted all of the interest. I'm talking about the experts, especially the man who leads the Presidential Task Force Committee, Taiwo Oyedele. So if you follow me, these are part of the controversial elements of that bill, which is Section 77 of that bill that talks about notwithstanding any formula that may be prescribed by any other law, the net revenue accrued by virtue of operation of the chapter and all of that follows that 10% of the VAT will now go to federal government as against 15 prior to this time, and then 55 to the states as against 50 last time, 35 to the local government. I want you to check those ones written in red, provided that 60% of the amount standing to the credit of state and local government shall be distributed among them on derivation basis. So that is a new formula, 60% going for derivation as against 20 prior to this time. If we go to the next one, which has to do with a particular element of this bill, Section 22, subsection 12 of the proposed bill, I want you to pay attention to what this says. For the purpose of attribution, any return under this section shall provide details of derivation of the taxable supplies by location in a manner prescribed by the service. So, according to the explainer by Taiwo Oyedele, he's simply saying, look, now before this time, it's about the headquarters of these companies. No, it's no longer going to be like that. Where these goods are consumed, that is where the people that, where these goods are consumed, the taxes or the VAT will be going to those particular states. That's why I cited Section 22, subsection 12 of that particular law that is being proposed. But Taiwo Oyedele also reeled out the fact that goods and services that contribute to tax the most, you can see all of them on your screen. If we move quickly to the simulation that was done for when this eventually takes effect. Before now, based on the old derivation formula, Lagos gets as much as 80.25%. But with the new derivation formula, Lagos will be getting about 15% less. That is, it's a loss for them, minus 81%. And you can see for Rivers as well. But if you look bottom, the least contributors to VAT, you can see that their percentage increase in terms of what will be given to them from this new derivation formula has even gone as high as 2,000%, 5,000%, places like that should be Imo State and all of that. So these are some of the cases being made. But also, let's go to some of the benefits that were listed. Let's talk about households. For instance, now, complete exemption of low-income earners up to 1 million per annum. That means if you earn anything about 83,000 naira and below per month, you're not going to be paying pay as you earn and all of that. So there are a couple of benefits for SMEs. For instance, the SMEs increase in tax exemption threshold for small businesses from annual turnover of 25 million to now 50 million. So before now, small businesses, you have to collect VAT. If your turnover is up to 25 million, they've increased that double now. If it's now up to 50 million, you're exempted from VAT. So there are a couple of things, but we seem to be lost in the issue of VAT. That's why we have the man who will be able to break it down for us right here in our Lagos studio. Mr. Muda Yusuf joins me right here. Muda Yusuf is the CEO of the Center for Promotion of Private Enterprises. He joins me in our Lagos studio. Doctor, thank you so much for coming on the program. We took our time to reel out some of the things that the proponent of the bill have been talking about. What's your interpretation as to what is playing out right now?
Well, my own understanding or my own take on what is playing out is that Just as the chairman of the committee said, we have about 200 provisions in this bill. And we have only 1 or 2 provisions that are controversial.
Yes.
And it's so yes, it's very important that we don't allow these few provisions to truncate the entire process. Because this bill or this reform is a very, very important reform. And just as the chairman of the committee outlined, you can see a whole lot of benefits, that will accrue both to business and even to states themselves as a result of this bill. So my view is that we should avoid the contentious part of this bill.
When you say avoid, what do you mean? This is the contentious part of the bill?
Yes, particularly this
section 77.
Yes, this section 77.
Okay.
Now, there are a few angles to it. First, there is the angle that says that the proportion of the allocation to the federal government will be reduced from 15 to 10%. That additional 5% will go to the states. Everybody is comfortable with that. But the big issue is this derivation issue, where those things are consumed, not where they are produced, where they are consumed. Now, the old formula is that we have 50% equality of states. Mm-hmm. That's the way it is distributed. 50% equality of states. 30% population. Yeah, 30% population. Mm. So if you take 50 plus 30, that's already 80%. Most of the states are comfortable with that arrangement. Most of them. So the 20% derivation, which the argument is that it's only a few states that are benefiting, they are ready to live with it. Because if you look at most of the northern states, you enjoy on the basis of equality, and many of them also have huge population. So 80% of the parameters, most of the states are comfortable with them, not minding the simulation that was put out there. 20% is the issue of whether the headquarters is there or there. They don't mind. So if you have a provision that wants to support a particular set of people, and they say that they don't need it, they are comfortable where they are.
Like they want to give you more food, you say?
Yes, okay. So why not leave them? So that you don't put all these fundamental reforms at risk. That will be my take. Because really, if you use the 60% derivation, there's no way they can win. Whether you are talking about where the headquarters is or where the consumption is. Because we need to also appreciate the disparities, the economic disparities across the country. What you buy is a function of your buying power. It's a function of the per capita income. It's a function of purchasing power. Look at the poverty map in the country. We have more poverty in the north than in the southern part of the country. So if you have a simulator that is saying that they will benefit more as a result of, I doubt it. And that is where this northern constituency, that is where they are coming from. Okay. Because when you talk about derivation based on consumption, the capacity to buy is not so much there. If it is derivation based on where they are producing, they don't have the advantage. But based on where the thing is sourcing from,
so you're
it's
saying
just 20%.
Both for consumption and for production, they are already disadvantaged.
They are disadvantaged.
So I'm looking at the screen of all the things that were listed as the biggest contributors in terms of products and services, or goods and services: telecom, cement, beverages, fast-moving consumer products, sugar, professional services, entertainment, and all of the argument of the proponent are saying that this is also highly consumed in the northern part of the country, that their proposal is based and driven by data, not just sentiment.
No, I don't think so. Although they have done the data, I don't have data. But looking at the poverty, because consumption is about ability to buy. Looking at the poverty map in Nigeria, when it comes to consumption, there are more consumption capacity to buy in the south than in the north. So that is why, in order to avoid unnecessary polarization, we should allow the sleeping dog to lie. Because we have bigger issues in this tax reforms.
So at the end of the day, I understand what you're saying, Doctor. At the end of the day, what do we now, besides the Because your idea is, if this is going to make the bill to fail, let's drop it. Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
this particular
section,
yes,
77
yes,
and section 22.
Because we have bigger benefits in other sections of the bills.
So let's walk through the reasoning of the government. The government is trying to say, we want to reposition your financial fortune. Is that a strong argument enough?
Already, the Taiwo Oyedele read out a whole lot of benefits that will be coming to the states, apart from this controversial section. Yeah. The 5% that the federal government is ceding to the states is something, you know. Then a lot of some other benefits about exemption of tax on the bonds that the states raise and so on and so forth. There are quite a lot of benefits to the states. So why get stuck with unnecessary controversy? So
let me also bring back what the politicians are saying. The politicians, Governor Zulum, Ali Ndume, I'm talking about the frontliners as far as this is concerned, because Governor Zulum was on our program, Ndume was also on our program, a couple of other interests were also on our program as far as this is concerned. They are saying, they are not trained, they're saying, throw away the baby and the bathwater. They are saying, for further consultation. Now, what do you think they mean by further consultation in your thinking? Because they are not saying they are going to reject this bill outrightly. They are just saying, based on this VAT controversy, that they want to consult further.
No, further consultations means that they want a review of this particular controversial session. Because for me, I think that is the biggest issue so far. And if you have 200 provisions, and you have just a fraction of a provision that is creating all this problem.
They call it the game changer provision.
No.
That's what it's called, the game changer provision.
No, I think it's something that you can avoid so that you move forward. When they talk about consultation, it's about ensuring that some of these controversial sessions are taken out before it is sent to the National Assembly. But it's already in the National Assembly. Yeah. So the National Assembly also provides a platform for consultation, for input. That is the whole essence of this public hearing.
One other concern some of us have, although Taiwo Oyedele has defended the fact that the FIRS has capacity, and he said Alpha Beta is not doing any work. No private entity is going to be collecting taxes. FIRS, which will now be renamed, will be doing all of the responsibility. But a lot of tracking is required. From what you see as a promoter of private enterprises, is there enough fiscalization to be able to track some of these things so that we can have accurate data for distribution eventually?
You see, we also need to relate to some realities. This economy is highly informal.
Okay.
If you look at the business space now, almost 80% or more of our businesses are informal. All these things you listed here, quite a lot of them are in the formal space. You talk of telcos, you talk of banks and all of that. But go to Balogun, go to Jankara, go to Mile 2 or go to Alaba Market, who is talking about VAT? And a whole lot of these products end up in these markets. These informal traders will pick them up and begin to distribute them to different parts of the country. There is no data for that. So we have a data issue as far as even this new formula is concerned. To actually trace, apart from those products that are, amenable to technology, like the bank transactions, like the telcos and all of that. Many of these other transactions, you can't easily trace them. Look at the ports. A whole lot of the VAT that you are talking about is coming from the ports. Because if you look at the products, although they were saying that the VAT exemption is just for, food and all of that. Yeah, but if you look at the tariff book, there are so many raw materials that manufacturers are using that are being VATed.
So we should be looking in that direction.
Even newsprints, it's under VAT. A whole lot of equipment, packaging materials, and all of those things. All of them, there is VAT component.
Dr. Yusuf,
so we need to expand the conversation.
Apparently, more consultation, more conversation. Even with yesterday's conversation, we're still having this conversation.
Exactly.
But we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue with the rest of some of the things I want to get your view on as far as the issue of this VAT is concerned. There's a lot in that bill beyond the argument about VAT, which is why I brought Dr. Yusuf to explore them. Join us again. Welcome back. We're still talking about the debates over the tax reforms that has, generated controversy. Dr. Muda Yusuf is my guest. He's the CEO of Center for Promotion of Private Enterprises. So, Dr. Yusuf, let's get to some of the benefits of these reforms for SMEs. My question will be, do you see it happening and the implementation and the possibility? If you look at number 9, it says, outlaw cash payment and physical roadblocks imposing burden on businesses. Is that doable? Let's use Lagos as a case study.
That will be a tall order. Because for most of the small businesses, it is not the formal taxation that is actually their problem. It's the imposition of tax by non-state actors. On paper, many of these things have been outlawed, but they are still operating freely. Because when you are at their mercy, the security agencies are not there to enforce the law. You have to sort yourself out with them. So it's a major issue, even within the markets. If you bring out any consignment, any load, or you want to load anything, in all these Lagos markets, for instance.
If I just drop the load on the ground,
yes,
they'll come and meet
you. They will come and meet you, and you have to pay them something. That's the case of a bank that wants to install a generator on Lagos Island. As you are bringing the generator, those guys showed up and said that you cannot offload this generator unless you sort them out. And if you don't sort them out, you are doing it at a very great risk. They have to part with some good money. So this impunity is a very, very big issue. Then secondly, some of these things will also require some constitutional amendments. Because in the Constitution, I'm sure the states have their purview as to what tax they can impose, what they cannot impose. The local governments also have their own powers within the Constitution. So whether this bill or this law can now supersede the Constitution is a different matter. So we also need to look at that. Because where any law is in conflict with the Constitution, that law cannot stand. So these are some of the things, but for this particular item, we need a lot more than just passing the law. We need to work a lot more on how to ensure effective enforcement. Because when you are in the bush and you are confronted with these characters,
which law is going to happen?
You are on your own.
Okay, let's go to number 6. Introduction of the Office of the Tax Ombudsman to protect taxpayers against arbitrary tax assessment. Yet again, we're at that place.
That's a very good thing. Because sometimes you have all manner of tax people just come and they intimidate people, And because there is no ready window for redress, if you have this kind of thing, it's a very good provision. At least you have a window where you can go there and complain. And they can at least look at it and weigh in on it. So it's a very good provision to protect, especially the SMEs, because the SMEs don't have the capacity to
they're the ones in focus
get tax consultants, get this and all of that, And we also need to simplify some of these things. All this input tax, output VAT, this is most of it are too complex for the small businesses.
Okay, my final question, Dr. Yusuf, will be, this is actually supposed to be about economic justice and equity for all.
Yes.
But we see the polarization that has come from all of this. In going forward, besides telling them, maybe you could reconsider this very controversial 77 and 22, how should they now be communicating so that if this passes, and some of these very ones that we are worried whether it's really possible, for instance, the roadblock issue, how can they make it happen effectively? Who has to be bought in? Because everybody has to be bought in to make this work.
Well, first, let me talk about issue of justice, economic justice here. Now, there is no incentive for states to encourage investments in our current tax laws, even in this one. Because there is nothing here to encourage or to support people who are encouraging production. This is about consumption. Now, take a state like Ogun State. They have about 3 cement plants there.
I know they have something, benefits and businesses. They have some things for
yes,
them as
I'm talking about incentivizing and encouraging states to be able to stimulate investment.
Okay.
If you bring investment to your state now, you don't have any serious benefit. Because the VAT that will be paid will be thrown into this pool and shared according to this formula. The company tax that will be paid by the company will be thrown into this pool and be shared by the formula. The education tax will be thrown. There is nothing for you as a state government. The only thing you get is payee. That's all. It is only the oil-producing areas that are enjoying the benefit of derivation from the economic activities in their domain. All others are not getting.
Perhaps it's maybe
that's
why,
another level of
conversation. So perhaps it's why they ceded, the federal government had to cede 5% to the state. I do not know. Dr. Muda Yusuf, CEO Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises. Yes. It's clear that this conversation is not over. Yes, but we must do what we can to build the country, and we hope everybody will come on board and it will not polarize our country. For the first time, a non-political issue, an economic issue is splitting the country, not politics. But it's good for democracy. It is. Doctor, thank you for coming on the program. Thank you. And that's it on the program. Thank you so much for your time and company. I'm Jeffrey Uzongo. You've been served on Lunchtime Politics. Bye-bye.